Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Films Network, as well as the newest Quentin Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is our regular guy, Terry.
Oh, right. Just regular guy now.
Yeah, I didn't come up with a good one this week.
I'm always excited when I come on because I'm like, oh, a new nickname. But so network, huh?
Yes, network. I had not seen this prior to this week, and there's always a little trepidation going into some of these AFI films because every once in a while you find one that just really doesn't work for you.
Yes.
Like I talked about All About Eve being one that didn't work for me at all. But
the one we did, Philadelphia Story, was kind of like, this doesn't work.
I mean, I get where people like this, something like Philadelphia Story.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are like Cary Grant friends. And
sure.
Stuff like that. So, okay, I get that. Network might be a movie that was made for me.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love Network. I mean, when I finished watching it the other night, I was like, I even said out loud, I was like, wow, like this movie's awesome. And Peter Finch, the guy that plays Howard Beale, the main character, phenomenal. I mean, just a phenomenal job. He was just as the messianic prophet of doom was just great. But it's like the whole story until how we got to that was just, it was great from the beginning to the end.
This is just the most wonderful like zeitgeist meter for like the late 1970s or 1976, where it's just, you get this constant sense of like paranoia that the world is like crashing down around you. And,
yeah.
And it just comes down to this point where you have this newscaster who just desperately wants to be able to go on air and swear and be like, things are bad in the world. And he turns into like a prophet, like halfway between Sean Hannity and Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
Just, I'm going to go on television and scream and then pass out halfway through it.
Right. Well, I like too how it also, the movie also gives you the question because it presents the question of, is he crazy? Has he suffered a mental break, or is he just come to like this realization, or has he just shed that whole fake, false television sense and like been like, this is the real world, like this is how I see it now, or he could have just been crazy like his friend. I don't remember the name of the character, but his best friend that was played by William Holden. It was like he was kind of like he was out throughout the movie kept saying he needs treatment, he's not well. So it's like, yeah, like that question was asked and never really answered in a way of like, it's like he could be crazy, but maybe he was the right kind of crazy, like the crazy that wasn't afraid to project the truth to everybody.
I think that's I think that's basically what the reality is, because he has this kind of a sense to me of a character who's kind of the product of his environment. That being, as I said, the 1970s is just the craziness of all the stuff that was going on in the late 60s, early 70s. So much political turmoil and Watergate and just a world where everything just felt like it was coming kind of crashing down and all the norms are falling apart and everything like that. So he kind of feels like just kind of a one person who's just been consumed by the moment of the time, and he just feels like he needs to express that in some way. And obviously this is not an accurate way of how this would work, because in real life, if someone actually tried doing this on television, they would just cut the signal.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of funny, like how you mentioned that everything, like with it being in the 70s, because a lot of that movie, for it being a satire on television and like a prophetic thing, it was very prophetic about what's happening in television and society today. I mean, like Peter Finch's character of William Beale, Howard Beale, sorry, is basically like what the character, like in 70s, he wouldn't be able to be on television for very long, like you were saying, because they would edit what he said. But in today, that's like what it takes to be on television. Like every character on television is Howard Beale.
Now it's This Week Tonight with John Oliver.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, John Oliver, or like, I mean, like you made references to Sean Hannity, but like a lot of like the stuff that you see on Fox Network is all the doom and gloom, like the world is going to heck in a handbasket.
Well, now that's every single news network.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, it was very. And I also liked It was that, and then the CCA bit with the corporate, like just the corporate takeover of media, and how that's like they basically the whole. It's like they've said, it's like you're what you're seeing is not real. It's what this big corporation wants you to see.
Yeah, I mean, I talked with a couple of people after watching this that this movie reminds me of a lot of the Frank Capra movie Meet John Doe, but as in a completely evil version of
Yeah.
that film.
Mm-hmm.
Where in that film you had this female newspaper reporter who wants to come up with a story to inspire people and get a bunch of attention and money for a newspaper. In this one, it's kind of the same. We had the Faye Dunaway character, who is essentially just the most like cynical and like unempathetic version of that character, who's just like, I'm gonna profit off of Beale.
Right, but you know, it's funny too because her character is a very much as much in the '70s as it is now, is an accurate portrayal of television and producers because there's like we've all talked, like you hear like a lot of people say, it's like, well, this happened, but this doesn't sell, this doesn't get ratings, this crazy story, this is what's going to draw people's attention. It's like in the way that the news was with this show. It's like when he got the main show and it was like all the flair and like, you know, soothsayer Sybil and Mata Curry with her dark secrets. That's like what it is now. It's like
it reminds me a lot of Nightcrawler, if you've ever seen the Jake
yes.
Gyllenhaal movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
She's a lot like the female, not the anchor, but the producer in that.
Renee Russo, right? When that, yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads, man.
Yeah, and that's like, but I want to, even though he played a background, I want to shine a light on Ned Beatty's character, because that part when he brings Beale into the conference room and gives that big thunderous speech with "You are messing with the forces of nature," and he goes on to that whole thing about like the explanation of how the universe and like humankind is not anything anymore. It's all run by dollars. It's like because he said petrodollars, electrodollars, and the multi-dollar, and just like it's like they said it was a very great like I don't know if this was the case he was making in the '70s by the movie, but it's a very great now you can put it like, man, history repeats itself. Because the stuff that this movie was about is stuff that is still being talked about today, that's been going on, all this behind the scenes thing.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of this movie holds up, if only because we're living in a period of immense chaos now, where it's easy to just be that guy in despair who's just running around fainting.
And so I'm trying to hit all the points here. And I liked the part 2 with William Holden's character, when he went crazy, not crazy, but he got mad about trying to write that book about the golden age of television. And he basically said, there is no golden age. There was never a golden age of television. Everybody writes this. He's like, television is always, like, he just realized, like, oh my God, the whole golden age, and like he was always telling those stories about when he was younger, and it made him seem like, you know, back in my day, television was this, but he realized that it wasn't. It was always been the same thing. And I like that about, I just like that about his character and everything. I like how he just like came to that realization. And like I said, this movie was this is one that I highly recommend.
There's so much we could just go in on this film. I think my favorite scene, of course, was the scene right after the television broadcast where he tells everyone to go out to their window and start screaming.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they go, the one or two people go out into the window and they just see person after person going to the window and screaming, "I'm mad! I'm not gonna take it anymore!" And the thunder just starts roaring in the background, and it's just like Beale seems to be onto something.
Well, I like. I was gonna make that reference too. I like how when he made the lightning and the thunder come when everybody did that, because that was a very big symbolization of like the storm is coming. You know, like Howard Beale's descent into madness, I guess, was like the calm before the storm. And then when he got to that point, it was like, now the storm is here. He's like, and like, because later on in that, you see that point when he tells everyone to send telegrams to the White House. And God, we forgot to mention Robert Duvall was in this. Robert Duvall played a great corporate jerk. He was awesome. But yeah, when he gets the phone calls and he says, he's like, right now, like, you know, he's like, because Beale's character says, I want you to send enough telegrams that the White House is knee deep in telegrams. And like an hour later, he gets a phone call saying like that the White House is knee deep in telegrams and they're waiting. It's like, yeah, it was just really cool. And it just, like we were talking, his character, like I said, and again, you can portray it in today's modern life because a lot of the people like his character that are on television have these mass followings. because people feel like, oh, they're telling it like it is. They're telling, and it's like, yeah, it's like I said, there's just so many great parallels to things that are going on today.
And it ends in that, and it builds up to that final insane ending where
Yeah.
I don't want to say what happens, but it just, maybe that's the I mean, haven't quite figured out what it's fully intended to say, but maybe this is just like the final culmination of just how insane things can get, where just you wow people up to the point where they start acting out like that, and that certainly has topical elements today.
Sure. Well, and like you said, not to ruin the ending, but like, but with what happens in the ending, you notice how calm the audience was? Like, it was all just almost like they didn't even think it was real. And then the camera zoomed in right away and everything. It was like, and like even today, a lot of times when you see things on television, before you have somebody tell you like, this is really happening, you're like, is this real or is this just like a show that they're putting on?
Yeah, I mean, this movie is the more you think about it, the more depressing it gets.
Yeah, right. For sure. Still watch it though. Definitely still watch it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
That's all for this segment of the show. Tune in for the next segment. We'll be discussing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Now we get to talk about this year's most anticipated film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Where does this sit for you?
As far as in Tarantino's echelon, I would put it probably right under Django, and Django is my number one. I would probably say this is my number two of his, which is very hard to do just because I love all of Tarantino's, but this movie was great.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect going into it, obviously, because I mean, every Tarantino film is going to be interesting, even if it's not great. Like even Death Proof, which I think is a kind of bad-ish film, is still super interesting when you give it some thought. But I went into this kind of like, okay, where is this going? Is he finally going to hit the point in his career where he starts like fading out, like De Palma style, like he's always feared? And I'm like, no, this is one of his most relaxed and like cozy films he's ever made.
Yeah.
Like, I know he says he's going to quit when he makes his 10th film, and we don't know what that's going to be yet. It might be Star Trek, which I'm hoping it will, because that'd be super interesting. But
everybody dies at the end.
That'd be a good way to finish the timeline. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was in a lot of ways his most Tarantino-ish movie.
Yes.
Every single like trope and motif and thing that he likes to play with, and dozens of his supporting actors that he's done with a dozen films with, they all show up, they all give their all, and it's one of the longest and most like relaxed scripts he's ever written.
And you know, it's funny because you've noticed throughout all of his movies that Tarantino is not just a master filmmaker, but a master screenplay writer. He is so great with dialogue, and there is a lot of dialogue scenes in this movie, just like there was in Hateful Eight and some of the other ones, but the dialogue is not boring.
I'd say this is infinitely better than Hateful Eight. Like, I like Hateful Eight, but this is like...
Oh, yeah.
This is a tier above that.
Yeah, for sure. But and like you said, with all this fun stuff, because when you're saying that, one of the scenes, and it's not a lot going on, but one of the scenes that I really like, and I think because it harks back to a time that Tarantino always tries to capture in his movies, is when it's night on Hollywood Boulevard and all the old Hollywood, like Planet Hollywood and like the drive-in movies, like all the big like landmark Hollywood places were starting to light their neon lights up. I just like that because it's like just going from like these old historic landmarks in Hollywood in the 60s, late 60s, 69 I think it took place, and when they all just started lighting up and everything, I was like, I think that was kind of like his homage, like his like nostalgia of the Hollywood that he remembers, or that like people always talk about, like the golden age of Hollywood, basically.
Yeah, when I wrote about this a couple weeks ago, I said this is 1969 via Disneyland, where this is just him kind of reimagining what the best of 1969 would have been. Because at the same time this was happening, the moon landing had happened a month prior. Ted Kennedy had gotten into a car accident and killed one of his family's interns. Woodstock was happening.
Yeah.
The Charlie Manson murders were about to happen.
Yeah.
This is the most chaotic year ever.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on this year, and I mean, obviously, this is it's not spoiling what happens, but this is effectively a movie about a series of events happening parallel to the Charlie Manson murders. which is when Sharon Tate was brutally murdered, obviously.
Yes. And I like how, because what you were saying with all the stuff that's going on, this movie almost is like the quintessential snowball trick where you throw the snowball up in the air. When everyone's looking at that, you're doing something else. Like, it was a very good, for lack of a better term, sleight of hand, because you were so focused on the one aspect of the film that you didn't see what was going to happen at the end. Which,
well, that's the trick of screenwriting that Tarantino is really good at. It's that he's always able to use this immense labyrinthian dialogue to slip in small cues and things about what these characters need to know, and it just makes them kind of come alive. Even though it all feels like it's like tangential wheel spinning, it all ends up kind of building into something. Like a couple throwaway lines early in the movie end up coming into play like in the last half hour of the film in ways you wouldn't expect, and it feels like such a cathartic payoff. It's like, oh, I wouldn't expect that to happen.
Right. Well, I like speaking of the foreshadowing, and I caught it, but I didn't get it all the way until the flamethrower in the shed.
That's what that's one of the things.
When you saw the flamethrower in the shed, and then you're like,
I don't want to.
Oh, he still kept that? Yeah. No, not going to spoil anything, but the flamethrower was just as good of a character as any of the others.
Early on, he says, I was trained to use the flamethrower, especially, and when I first heard that, I was like, no, he didn't. He's like a dainty little Hollywood guy. It's like, and then it cuts to him actually training with him. I was like, oh, he did.
Right. Can we do something about this?
And I didn't think that would come back later. And it's like, oh, that comes back later.
Oh, but speaking of that, because we were talking about Tarantino, I believe one of the best things Leonardo DiCaprio ever did was drop off the face of the earth for a long time, because he is a phenomenal actor.
You mean like after when he was between like Titanic and when he kind of did his career resurgence? Or?
I think it was after The Beach, when he just kind of stopped.
So when he was like,
and stuff.
so like when he was a kid actor, then became the adult actor.
Yeah, because even as a kid actor, you saw how good he was. Like, especially in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, the talent was there, but he started to get typecast as that heartthrob, and then he stopped. And because like one of the scenes, like just to show the power of him, is that scene when he's on the Western and he can't remember his lines. And then he goes into the trailer and has that whole like solo monologue with himself. I was like, that is brilliant acting right there. Like Leo does that so well.
Well, obviously acting like that, you have to have a really good script. And like we said, Tarantino is very good at this.
Yes, yeah, he definitely. He's he already won. How many Oscars has he won already?
Tarantino? I would suspect he doesn't have that many, because he does.
I think he won one for Jackie Brown. And did he win one for Inglourious Bastards or Django?
Tarantino strikes me as like Oscar repellent.
You know he's going to win a Lifetime Achievement Oscar.
Of course.
Because, he's changed.
Well, they're going to do what they did for John Wayne and Leonardo DiCaprio, which is they're going to pick some movie late in his career and say, okay, here's an Oscar for that.
Yeah.
It's like your best performance was in The Searchers or Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but we'll give you one for True Grit because you're still alive.
Yeah. So funny too, because it's like Tarantino is like, in this movie it's 69, so they make the Muhammad Ali reference, and I'll make it too, because he is like Muhammad Ali of this time, where Muhammad Ali was a trash talker, talked all this stuff about how great he was, and everyone was like, kid this, kid, and he backed it up. He is considered one of the greatest boxers of all time. Tarantino went into the film industry very cocky and very sure of himself, and he has backed it up tremendously, because he's probably going to be known as one of the best filmmakers of this generation.
He will, and he's also going to be remembered as having an absolutely abysmal personality in real life.
Yes, but some of the mad geniuses are the ones that have the biggest character flaws.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like being brilliant generally comes with being like a sociopathic person who doesn't fit in with everyone else. And in his case, tends to go on CNN and scream at people who think his films are violent, or punches people in the parking lot or something like that.
But we've said there's like the thing about separating the person from the art, because as bad as he is personality-wise, there's a lot of good things that he's done, because he's resurrected a lot of actors' careers, because he remembers them from the films that he saw them in when he was younger, and he's like, oh, I liked you in this movie that I saw when I was a teenager. I want you to be in my movie and play this guy. Don Johnson resurrected his career a little bit. John Travolta's career was failing before he got Pulp Fiction. Like John Travolta credits Tarantino with saving his career. Luke Perry made a cameo for crying out loud. But Perry made a cameo in this movie. Even Timothy Oliphant, who you haven't seen in a while.
Oh, there are tons of like one-off like
Yeah.
cameos in this movie. That was one of the things that kind of off-put me about this, is that this movie is so ultimately focused on its two lead characters that so many of the immensely great sidecast characters are that just show up for one scene and that's it. Like you get one scene of Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Like you got Kurt freaking Russell, one of the best actors ever.
Yeah.
And one scene. This is not how you use Snake Plissken's time right. But that's a personal gripe. He's there to fill a purpose.
Yeah.
And obviously Tarantino just wants to have like all of his favorite actors show up in one more scene. I'm surprised Jackson didn't get one, but he just got a whole role in Hateful Eight. So maybe he's fine with that for now. But yeah, like no, it's like this is my last time to work with a lot of these people, so I might as well just give them a scene.
You know, but again, too, when we're talking, we'll go back to like the filmmaking thing, because there's not a lot of action. There is action in this movie, but it's interesting the way that the action is, because the action in the movie is fake, because it's the action in the movie is taking place in the movies that they're making. So
kind of like Hail Caesar.
Yes, yeah, so there's not a lot of the dialogue. And just kind of that avant-garde cinema where it's just this is the life of this failing Hollywood actor in 1969 Hollywood. This is just a few days in his life, and it just follows it. So
honestly, I kind of love that, because I think doing a hangout movie is probably a lot harder than being a dramatist. Because if you do a hangout movie, you have to kind of understand how to bring out the best in these characters without having to kind of rely on the fact that these are characters with conflicts, and you don't have the benefit of a strict structure to the story. And he's kind of going off on his own and just doing his own thing in terms of how the film is like assembled. It's almost like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
Like the movie, the structure is really strange. It's set over the course. It starts on one evening. Then the rest of the film is set over the course of 2 days that are set 6 months apart.
Yeah.
So any screenwriter that doesn't know how to handle just moment-to-moment pacing and building nuance out of these characters, he would just completely flounder, and this movie would be a complete train wreck, but it's not. So to me, it's one of his best features. Unfortunately, that's all the time we had to talk about this film. Join us for the final segment. We'll be getting this week's movie recommendation. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Time for this week's movie recommendation.
So I wanted to recommend, because I was in the store the other day and I saw a Time magazine with a picture of Robin Williams on the front, and I realized that it's actually been 5 years since his suicide. So I wanted to recommend my favorite Robin Williams movie of all time, The Birdcage. It was made in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And I think, as far as Robin Williams comedies goes, this to me is Robin Williams at his best. Basically, him and Nathan Lane play two gay men that own a drag club in Miami, and they have a son, and their son comes home from college, and he's going to get married to the daughter of a very conservative Republican governor that gets caught up in a scandal, and it's played by Gene Hackman, who does really well, and they all go. So the whole premise of the story is, because they're conservative, the son wants Robin Williams and Nathan Lane to play straight at this dinner that they're going to have, and everything that can go wrong goes wrong. And it's basically, it was based on a French play called Les Comédies des Fallets, which is a comedy of errors. So it's like they're trying to play it so right and make everything perfect, but in essence, just causes absolute chaos. It's got great actors in it, Robin Williams, Nathan Lane, even Hank Azaria plays like just a flamboyant maid, and he is hysterical in this. He can't wear shoes, so every time he has shoes on, he has to pretend to be a straight butler. And every time he wears shoes, he just falls because he can't walk in shoes because he's always been in bare feet. But as I said, for people out there that want to get into the Robin Williams canon, he's got so many great movies. But if you want him as a comedic actor, to me, The Birdcage is where you should begin.
I can't take any serious performance by Hank Azaria because every time I just think of The Simpsons.
Yeah, right?
It's like, oh my gosh, it's Kent Brockman again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he shows up briefly in The Right Stuff as a small character, and I was just like, this is horrifically distracting. And he shows up as a news anchor in the '98 Godzilla film, which is just.
That's right, yeah, with the camera.
That's just a big middle finger, isn't it?
Yeah,
But yeah, in terms of Robin Williams, my 2 picks for him would be Good Will Hunting and The Fisher King. Because I had the chance to see both of those in theaters, and he's great in both of those.
So Good Will Hunting, definitely, because I think he won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting, did he not?
Yeah, right after he committed suicide about 5 years ago, the Hollywood Palms did a special charity screening of Good Will Hunting, and I went and saw that to support it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was fascinating to see, like, in that kind of way.
Yeah, and that's what like we were talking, trying to sum up his career, and because there's so many other, Good Morning Vietnam, where it was comedy and drama. I mean, even Hook, him as Peter Pan, he was the perfect cast as an older Peter Pan because he played that middle-aged part so well, but then he also could tap into that childhood essence that was Peter Pan, and he did it so he was just probably one of the best actors of the generation that I think anybody that wants to get into film should pay attention to him to see or just study acting because he truly was great at everything that he did.
Hook is so controversial, though.
Yeah. Grown-ups killing kids.
Well, you meet that, and you meet people that fervently love the film and think it's one of the best films ever, and people who fervently hate everything it is and stands for.
It wasn't very. It was it was based on Peter Pan, but it was Peter Pan as an old man. So it's Wendy and all of them were already gone. So you could. Spielberg was able to play on a new Peter Pan story.
That feels like one of those that feels like a modern film idea, like when they do these late period sequels like Maleficent or something like that.
Yeah.
Where you just completely rewrite the sequel. Like this is the character 30 years later in live action. That's all the time we have for this episode of the Fox Valley Film Critics. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to find past recordings of the show, you can do so on the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at AntisocialCritI, that's critic without the C at the end of it. And you can find my written reviews at Geeks Under Grace and Legal Insurrection. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.